In Chinese, they are called the Liudong Renku, the floating population. These are the migrant workers who have flooded into Chinese cities in search of a better life. As the Chinese economy has undergone its phenomenal growth of the last several years, millions of people have left the countryside for work in the cities. No one knows the exact number of migrant workers. However, estimates run from 200 to 300 million people. In large cities like Beijing or Shanghai, migrant workers can make up to 1/4 of the population. Taken together, these people represent the largest migration in human history, 3 times the number of people who immigrated to America from Europe over an entire century. When the migrant workers reach the city, they use a different term to define the lives they have chosen, "chuke," to go out. They see no future for themselves in their rural homes, so they go out, seeking to change their fate. Changing one's fate is no easy task. The work migrants find in the cities is low-paying and difficult. They often work longer hours than allowed by law, at wages below the minimums set by the government. These migrant workers power the assembly lines in China's many factories. They provide services in restaurants, beauty salons, and brothels. They construct the high-rise buildings that dominate the Chinese urban landscape. They clean homes and care for professional people's children. Many even eke out a living by collecting recyclable plastic bottles from the city's many trash cans. China's position as the manufacturing and assembly center for the world offers opportunities to those leaving the countryside. They welcome the low wages and long hours as a better life than the one they left behind. Rural China still raises its food using manual labor, labor which breaks down even the strongest over a lifetime. Approximately 55% of China's vast population lives in rural areas. According to the Rural Development Institute, China's 210 million agricultural households represent 1 out of every 3 farm families on the planet. While farmers are better off today than they were during the farming collectives established during Mao's Great Leap Forward, rural poverty has persisted and a large gap remains between urban and rural incomes. According to a 2009 report by China's Agricultural Ministry, per capita income for China's 900 million rural residents was 4,700 yuan. This translates to roughly $646 per year. The per capita income for an urban person during this same year was more than 3 times higher at over 15,000 yuan. Thus, in the last 30 years, China has gone from being one of the world's most egalitarian societies to being one with a huge gap between rich and poor. Furthermore, rural development tends to lag behind the faster-growing urban regions. As cities continue to grow more quickly, more and more people are joining the floating population and migrating from rural to urban areas. It is not only in income that the disparity between rural and urban Chinese is evident. In rural areas, only 41% of Chinese children will finish middle school, as opposed to 76% in the cities. Furthermore, a child from a rural region has only a 6% chance of entering a university. A child from the capital city of Beijing has a 60% chance of studying at the university level. Rural Chinese also lack many of the modern conveniences that we take for granted. Access to the internet, cell phones, cameras, and appliances such as washing machines, color TVs, and refrigerators is far less in the countryside. Migrating to the city provides rural Chinese with greater access not only to a higher income, but also to the consumer goods that can make life easier. So while the life of the floating population is difficult, it is not without its rewards. The city offers a fresh start and access to many experiences only dreamed about in the countryside. Big cities have always offered opportunities to people with skills and talents. Those with skills and talents can open up possibilities for those with less. The innovation of city dwellers provides opportunities for the migrants. For example, people opening factories provide opportunities for those who sew. This has always been true and is true in urban China today. Images of workers in Beijing and other major Chinese cities are no different than those in any booming economy. The opening of China's economy began in 1979 under the leadership of Deng Xiaoping. The premier put out a call to Chinese to get rich quick, believing it did not make sense for people to be both socialist and poor. As Deng famously stated, "Black cat, white cat, who cares what color the cat is as long as it catches mice?" Since the reforms began, China's economy has grown at an average rate of 9% per year, providing an unprecedented 30 years of growth. During this time, the Chinese have shifted from riding bicycles to driving cars, from wearing Mao jackets to sporting designer labels, and from eating Chinese food to dining on KFC. Many people have benefited from this economic growth, including the migrants. However, there are obstacles to their success, one of which is the hukou, or household registration, which was established in 1958. At birth, all Chinese are required to register with the local authorities as either urban or rural, based on their birthplace. This registration will follow them throughout their lives. The primary purpose of this process is to control the movement of the rural population into the cities and avoid providing all those people with the services provided in urban areas. Those who possess an urban hukou have access to a myriad of social services, including education, medical care, food, housing, and employment. People with a rural hukou are prohibited from migrating to the cities and do not have access to these state-subsidized services. Their hukou rights are limited to control over farmland only. As they migrate to the cities, they are considered to be there illegally. They have a precarious grasp on their situation that provides no safety net. They try to keep themselves afloat in the city while earning money to help their families at home. The global economy and policies of the Chinese government will determine the future of the floating population. By providing low interest rates to encourage borrowing, the government helped create the industrial expansion China has recently experienced. Also, an artificially weak yuan has made it easy for the rest of the world to buy Chinese-made products. A shift in either of these policies could close factories and send millions into unemployment. Furthermore, there are signals which indicate how the government will treat the unemployed. Just before the Olympic Games in Beijing, hundreds of buses removed thousands of Chinese workers from sites near the competition to keep them off the world's television screens. In addition, the Chinese economy, like all economies, is affected by the ups and downs of the global economy. The current economic downturn that began shortly after the Olympic Games closed thousands of Chinese factories, sending many of the floating population back to their villages. The floating population lives on the periphery of Chinese society and far from the concerns of global consumers. The economic boom in China created both the wealth of the new industrialists and the floating population. How the Chinese government will finally treat this group will speak volumes about the people and government of China. Can the government shift some of the wealth its policies have created into the hands of its weakest members? Will it be able to shrink the widening gap that exists between rich and poor? Or will the society continue to be stratified? Despite any actions on the government's part, the migrant workers continue to float between the two Chinas.